All right, for decades, his name existed mostly in history books, tied to a monarchy that fell more than 40 years ago. But today, as Iran witnesses one of its most volatile phases in years, that name is returning to the headlines. Reza Pahlavi, Iran's exiled crown prince, is once again stepping into the spotlight. From outside the country, he is urging Iranians not to step back, not to lose momentum, and to return to the streets. At a time when anger against the regime is boiling over and when Iran's opposition appears fractured, Pahlavi is presenting himself as a unifying voice for change, not calling for a throne but calling for a transition. So who exactly is Reza Pahlavi is the big question. Why is he speaking out now? And what does his vision for a post-regime Iran, including closer ties with countries like India, really look like? Let's take a closer look. Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Dive brought to you by NewsX, where we will take you through these unanimous questions on the infamous Reza Pahlavi. My name is Vineet and let's get started. Well, Reza Pahlavi is the eldest son of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, a ruler whose reign ended abruptly with the 1979 Islamic Revolution. That revolution transformed Iran from a monarchy into an Islamic republic and forced the royal family into permanent exile. Reza Pahlavi was just 19 years old when his family fled the country. Since then, he has lived outside Iran, spending decades in exile, largely in the United States, watching the country he was born to rule change dramatically. Despite the fall of the monarchy, the title of Crown Prince never fully disappeared. For supporters, it represents continuity, national identity, and an Iran before clerical rule. For critics, it is a reminder of authoritarian past many Iranians rejected. But what's important is this: Reza Pahlavi has never ruled Iran. His political relevance comes not from power, but from symbolism and from his consistent opposition to the Islamic Republic. Over the years, he has positioned himself as a pro-democracy advocate, engaging with the Iranian diaspora and international leaders, waiting for a moment when Iran itself might be ready for change. And now, amidst renewed unrest inside the country, that moment, he believes, has arrived. Reza Pahlavi's return to the spotlight is closely linked to what is unfolding inside Iran. The country is witnessing renewed unrest driven by economic hardship, political repression, and growing public anger towards the ruling establishment. Despite crackdowns, protests have continued to surface across cities. What stands out is this is a crisis of legitimacy. For many Iranians, trust in the system has eroded and the opposition space remains fragmented. In that vacuum, Reza Pahlavi has stepped forward from exile, describing the moment as revolutionary, not just another cycle of protests, but a deeper rupture between the people and the regime. His argument is simple: fear is no longer working, and retreat now would only strengthen the system he believes is already under strain. That message, coming from a familiar name, has pushed him back into the center of global attention. From exile, Reza Pahlavi has delivered a clear and urgent message to the Iranian people: do not step back. At a news conference in Washington, Pahlavi went a step further, publicly acknowledging a leadership role. He has stated, and I quote, "The Iranian people have called for me to lead. I reaffirm my lifelong pledge by stepping in to lead the movement that will take back our country." It was one of his strongest statements yet, signaling a shift from being just a symbolic opposition figure to positioning himself as a potential leader of a transition. At the same time, Pahlavi has stressed that his call is not for violence or chaos, but for sustained civil resistance. Protests, strikes, and public defiance, he argues, are the tools that can keep pressure on a system already under strain. He has also acknowledged the risks: arrests, violence, intimidation, but insists that fear is precisely what the regime relies on to survive. Still, questions remain. Can leadership from exile translate into real influence on the ground? Supporters say his clarity matters. Critics say leadership must ultimately come from inside Iran. But what is undeniable is Reza Pahlavi is no longer speaking as a distant observer. He is stepping forward and claiming a role in what he believes is Iran's defining moment. Given his lineage, the question is unavoidable. Is Reza Pahlavi seeking to restore Iran's monarchy? His answer has been consistent. Pahlavi has repeatedly said that Iran's future system of governance must be decided by the people of Iran, not imposed by any individual or cleric, family or political group, including him. He has called for a national referendum after the end of the current system, allowing Iranians to choose freely between a republic, a constitutional monarchy, or another democratic framework. In the interim, he has spoken about the need for a transitional phase focused on stability rather than ideology, one that preserves institutions, restores the civil liberties, and prepares the ground for free and fair elections. Pahlavi has described his own role not as a ruler in waiting, but as a facilitator of transition, someone who can help unify opposition voices, engage the international community, and prevent chaos during a sensitive political moment. In that sense, while his name is rooted in Iran's past, his pitch is centered on process over power, a pathway to democracy, not a return to the throne. Reza Pahlavi argues that decades of isolation and confrontation have left Iran economically weakened and diplomatically cut off, and that a democratic transition must be followed by a fundamental reset in foreign policy. He has said a future Iran would seek normal relations with international community, reintegrating into global institutions, and an end to policies that have triggered sanctions and isolation. He has also pledged that a free Iran would abandon the pursuit of nuclear weapons, framing them as a source of instability rather than security. His focus instead is on economic rebuilding, restoring international credibility, and shifting Iran's global posture from ideological confrontation to pragmatic engagement. In laying out his vision for a post-regime Iran, Reza Pahlavi has made a specific outreach to India. He has described India as a country with which Iran shares deep civilizational, cultural, and historical ties, links that he says have been overshadowed by decades of geopolitical tension and sanctions. He has argued that a free and democratic Iran would look to India as a long-term strategic partner, not merely in trade, but across technology, energy, and regional connectivity. He has pointed to India's role as a stable democracy and an emerging global power, suggesting that closer ties could help Iran reintegrate into the international system without falling into new dependencies. In his post-regime vision, cooperation with India would be based on mutual respect, economic development, and people-to-people links rather than ideological alignment. The message is deliberate. A future Iran, he says, would not be isolated or confrontational, but open, cooperative, and outward-looking, with India playing a key role in what the transition is. Reza Pahlavi stands at the intersection of Iran's past and its possible future. Whether he becomes a leader, a facilitator, or simply a rallying force or a voice, one thing is very clear. His name is back in Iran's political conversation at a moment when the country's future is being openly challenged. Mr. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert, with us on the broadcast to talk more about this. Mr. Lali, well, what's happening is Iran is not happening for the first time. It's a repeat of what's happened in the past. It's been quelled, but this time around, the enormity of the resistance against the regime is palpable. It is so palpable that people in exile for decades are looking to come back and reinvigorate the Iran that we saw in the 60s and 70s. It was an open, modern Iran which was not driven by theocracy or ideology. And that's exactly what India also stands for. Do you think that it is opportune, not only for Iran, for the world also to have another country like India?
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, it's a subject very close to my heart. And why do I say that? Because my father was born in Iran and so was my grandfather. That picture on the left is that of Iran. And if you see my father's sister, who we call Bua in India, are wearing skirts, which we can't even imagine. This is from the 60s, and then after that, even we fled. Iran is not a country, Vineet. It's a civilization. And, your report was such a defining and a beautiful report on what Reza wants to do, but he hasn't been back to Iran since 1979. I mean, and a lot of Iranians, when I used to live in the US, were in the same area, and a lot of Iranians have moved, especially to the West Coast and own gas stations. And Reza was never seen until now. He was never heard until now. And now all of a sudden, the kind of noises he's making, although the right noises, but I don't think he has any credibility amongst the Iranian people, and especially on the ground. And what really takes away from all of it is his meeting with Bibi Netanyahu in 2023. So he is in a lot of quarters in Iran perceived to be a Mossad asset. Those pictures are all over the place. So while I have to agree that Iran needs a change, there are people who are really, really suffering. But we need, it is not as simple as the problems in Iran. The discussion would be incomplete if we were not to speak about the state of Israel, the role the state of Israel is playing through the United States of America, the role of AIPAC, AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which influences American decision. I mean, in all honesty, in what way is Iran a threat to the United States? If they're talking about demonstrators in Iran for rightly reasons, what has happened in Minneapolis? I mean, Donald Trump is talking about maybe possibly implanting another royal family implant on Reza Pahlavi. And the way he has removed a democratic leader, even if the elections were not right in Venezuela, he was abducted at night. So America has a very serious credibility crisis in Iran. And that itself becomes a great rallying point for Iranians to, lobby for the flag, in which even if there were any differences in Iran, but as soon as you take two names in Iran, the state of Israel and the United States of America, they all start rallying, which is bad news, because this will, in any way, it might help the current dispensation in making things easier for them, because America and Israel are perceived to be pathological enemies of Iran. I mean, Mike Pompeo just said a few months ago, and he's not a small fish. He was the Secretary of the State, and he's on record a few months ago saying that Mossad and CIA assets need to warm up in Iran. So yes, the situation is sad. 2,500 protesters, by even the most conservative estimates, have died, and another 800 which are waiting to go to the gallows, for which now there seems to be back-channel talks with Iran and America. And if you hear to Donald Trump's statement, although the most difficult job is to predict Donald Trump and his mercurial mind, but what I've heard in the last 24 hours, he seems to be kind of backing off. I could tell you the reasons why he's backing off, but there is murmurs in the backwaters, because Iran is not just something like Venezuela or the way they treated Iraq or Libya. Iran is a very important country in this part of the world, and Iran can really, really destabilize this part of the world, especially when Americans have over 10 bases where there are 50,000 people which are actually within the reach of Iranian missiles. So a lot of allies could be under threat. I mean, if Iran was to start shooting left, right, and center, can you imagine the state in the Gulf? Especially that now Saudi Arabia is also not happy with the way Israel is, operating with all impunity in this part of the world, especially how Israel simply went and, attacked Qatar, which is the strongest ally. So, it's a very divided house now, and Donald Trump has done nothing else but divided it more. But in that division and polarizing the world, he might have just united a few Iranians who were probably against the regime beneath.
Fair enough. Mr. Lali, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your insights and your perspective on this evolving but still difficult situation brewing in Iran. We take a short break. We'll be right back.